A couple of weeks ago, I launched the Great Lakes Fisherman Crappie Challenge, where I asked you, the viewer, to submit lakes in the southeast Michigan or northwest Ohio area, and I would select one and attempt to find and catch crappies, and hopefully provide you with some tips on fishing crappies in that body of water. User DHBFPV suggested Patterson Lake and the Halfmoon chain of lakes in Washtenaw and Livingston counties in southeast Michigan. I spent the better part of 2 afternoons on this chain of lakes attempting to locate and catch crappie. The results are in. How did I do? Stick around to find out, and at the end of this video, I'll give 3 key takeaways for fishing crappie on the Halfmoon chain of lakes. Before we go on, please remember to hit that like button, ring that bell to be notified of our future videos, and consider hitting the subscribe button. These 3 things really help our channel out. Thanks. The Halfmoon chain of lakes straddles the border of Livingston and Washtenaw counties in southeast Michigan. Although the chain consists of 7 named lakes, with only 2 afternoons to fish, I had to concentrate my efforts, and thus only focused on 3 of them: Patterson Lake, Halfmoon Lake, and Round Lake. On day 1, I put in at the launch on Halfmoon Lake and accessed Patterson Lake via Watson and Round Lakes. After emerging through the large culvert on the south side of the lake, I immediately marked a large school of what appeared to be crappie hanging out in a deep 20-foot basin straight out from the culvert. This color combination tends to do pretty well on these northern lakes, especially in water with this clarity. I fished many lakes before that have water clarity like this one. A little bit darker water, but still semi-clear, not real cloudy, and this color combo does pretty well. So we'll see how we do here. There's a fish. And it's a crappie. Not a huge fish. Pretty emerald color by the eye there. But just been out here a few minutes on Patterson Lake. Just came through the bridge. There it is. And came upon a big school of fish here hanging out in the deeper water. Just cast out, let it drop, slow retrieve back to the boat, and found one. And here's a look at that school of crappie that I'm fishing here in this basin. And as you can see, they're clustered up pretty tight in a pretty large group. I explored the shoreline and shore drop-offs in a counterclockwise direction and didn't find any more large schools like the one I found in the first basin. However, upon arriving back to the western shoreline, I did locate some fish hiding under an orange-covered pontoon that was docked over the deeper side of the drop-off. Adjacent to the pontoon were some old submerged pilings. This combination of structure and shade from the pontoon was the perfect place to find some crappies. After a few more casts at this location, I decided to go give Halfmoon Lake a try on the way back to the boat ramp. While I didn't spend a lot of time on Halfmoon Lake, I did mark what appeared to be 3 large pilings located in 15 to 20 foot of water on the northeast side of the lake. The live scope marked some decent-sized fish hanging around the pilings, but I couldn't get anything to go here. At this point, I decided to head back towards the boat launch. As I approached the stretch of shore near the launch, I noticed a point where the deep water came very close to shore. In addition, there were a couple of downed trees here, a perfect place for a crappie hideout.
And that would about do it for day one. Having caught 5 crappies total that day, I felt optimistic that with one more day on the lake, I could put what I learned to use and find more fish. And as you'll soon see, my feelings proved to be correct. So on day 2, I did something I don't normally do, and that is that I stopped to get some minnows. The lake being new to me and realizing how tough it was on the first day and how clear the water was, I thought maybe having some, live bait would help. It often does on these lakes that are super clear because fish rely way more on their sight than they do in muddy water. Muddy water, they tend to rely on their lateral lines and just kind of peripheral vision flashes of movement to locate fish and their sense of smell. But in clear water, you really got to make them believe. In general, it's a lot tougher fishing clear water than it is muddier or dirty water. But as it turned out, I really didn't need the minnows. I tried them in a few different locations where I found fish on day 1. It turned out that those fish were not there. But on day 2, I finally happened upon some structure that had a load of fish. And as you'll see, I just used artificials and the same bait the entire time. Well, I didn't realize that my camera was off when I made the cast on this fish, but nonetheless, you can see here that I'm focusing my efforts on the area just underneath this boat within the confines of the legs of the boat lift. The fish were hiding in the shade of that boat, and they were tough to get to, so dock shooting was really the only option I had to get my bait in there without banging it into the boat or without getting it hung up constantly on the rungs of the boat lift.
Oh, there's a nice one. And there's a nice crappie. Let's give that one a measure. About 11 and a half. Nice black crappie. There's one. Crappie. And there's one.
Now, I'm not sure if you caught that, but I'm going to replay that hit in slow motion so you can see the twitch of the line right there. And that's really what I'm looking for with the high vis. Sometimes you feel it, but sometimes you really don't feel it, and all you really do is get a sense when you see the line kind of twitch or move. And even when you do feel it, the reinforcement from seeing the line twitch allows your instincts to work faster and set the hook. If you just rely on feel, sometimes you miss that fish, but seeing it gives your brain just a split-second advance notice that the hit is there and allows you to get the hook set. And I've noticed ever since I switched over to high-vis line, I make many more hookups than I used to.
A little smaller. It's not unusual to catch some of the biggest ones first, and then as you fish a spot longer, the size seems to come down, and I think that's just because the bigger fish are just more aggressive, so they get first pickings, and once you've caught them and they kind of go and hide for a little bit, you just start catching smaller and smaller fish. crappie.
Yeah, and I think this is about where I call it a day, but stick around because now I'm going to go over some takeaways from my experience here on the Halfmoon chain of lakes and talk about some pointers for any of you who want to give it a try. So to summarize my couple of afternoons here fishing this Halfmoon chain of lakes, I have come up with 3 takeaways for those that are looking to fish the lake for crappie. The first one is to fish the docks, pilings, and other man-made structure that provide vertical structure and dark shaded water. Crappie obviously relate to structure. That's a well-known fact. And on these lakes, there's not a lot of it. Usually when there's no other structure on a lake, a lot of times the crappie will resort to just hanging out in the bottom of tall weeds. And there may be some of that going on here because there wasn't a lot of man-made structure around portions of these lakes, but certainly there are parts where there is man-made structure. And with the exception of a couple of shores where I found some downed trees that were long enough to get out over the deeper water, the man-made structure seemed to be where most of the fish were holding. The second takeaway is use live bait or natural colored artificial baits. As I mentioned, this lake is very clear and fish need to be able to see something that looks real to them. Again, in cloudy or muddy water, this is less important because fish are more relying on their sense of smell and their lateral lines for vibrations in the water to find the fish. But when they're using their sense of sight like they do in clear water, the bait needs to look real in order for them to bite. And then finally, because of the way these fish were holding to that structure, it's imperative that if you don't know how to do it already, you need to learn how to shoot docks. That technique gets your bait into places that you'll never be able to reach if you don't know how to do it. You can try casting sideways and get under there, and you might do okay with that. You might get a few shots back there. You're probably going to hit a lot more boats and pontoons and things like that and get hung up a lot more doing it that way. But once you learn how to dock shoot, you can really put that bait right where you want it. You have very few times that you're going to be, getting it wrapped around things. And it's just a very efficient and effective way to fish when the fish are holding this type of structure. So that's going to about do it for crappie challenge number 1. I hope that if you have fished the Halfmoon chain in the past for crappie, or if you plan to in the future, that you'll find this video helpful. I'd like to thank user DHBFPV for the submittal. And I think we're going to try this again here in the near future. So look for a future video for crappie challenge number 2. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you the next time.